We're not going to applaud Angie's response nor the question, except in a form of silent applause. You will signify your applause by doing this, and I guess when I'm done, if you want to do a standing ovation, you would do this. Okay. All right, Angie, we'll hear your opening remarks.
Thank you so very, very much, Mr. Weinman. I really appreciate you being here and being willing to moderate this tonight. I want to do two things before we get going with my opening remarks. I want to recognize Mayor Rhonda Pownell, who is here with us. Rhonda, would you please stand up and be noticed? Yes, please. Excellent. And then City Councilor Clarice Graba, who is here with us as well. So thank you so much for being here tonight to join us. I do want to start, though, as we always start our town halls, with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. So if you can, please stand and let's say the pledge together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so, so much. I also just want to take an opportunity to recognize all of the veterans who are here with us today. So if you served this nation in any branch of the military, would you please either stand or just raise your hand and let us recognize you, please? Thank you so, so very much. And given we are so close to the proximity of Memorial Day, I also would be reticent if I didn't mention all of those who gave their lives in order that we could be here tonight and respectfully agree and disagree with one another, and that we could be and we could live in a country with democratic principles and so faithfully execute the Constitution of the United States of America. So again, thank you for everyone who gave your life. Thank you. I want to just start tonight by saying I committed that if you gave me the opportunity to represent you, that I would have town halls on a monthly basis. Every month we come together. The world happens sort of around us. We come together. It's an opportunity for me mostly just to listen to you. It has helped me in the past as legislation has come up. Look for those opportunities to improve that legislation. It's pointed out legislation that perhaps I haven't had an opportunity to review yet. So far in the Congress, we've had over 6,000 either resolutions or pieces of legislation to review. And so thank you so much for being here to talk about what is in the best interest of Minnesota, of the 2nd Congressional District, of Rice County, of Northfield, and being here to share your point of view with me. I'm always going to be looking for common ground, but I'm also going to tell you when I don't agree with you or when we don't agree. And so I want us to have that kind of respectful dialogue where I have the opportunity to listen, to advocate for the whole of this congressional district. My office here in the congressional district office is based in Burnsville. Nick Coe, could you just stand and be recognized here? So there's Nick waving at you at the back of the room. Nick is my district director, and the job of a district staff is to take care of constituents. It is not a political office at all. And one of the greatest things that I'm proud of so far as your member of Congress is just the advocacy work that we're doing on issues like Social Security issues, Veterans Affairs, and I want to share just a couple of examples with you. We had a gentleman who came into our office who was having some issues with Medicare around his prescription drugs. Despite the fact that he'd been paying his deductible, he wasn't getting the benefits that he should be receiving. So my casework team was able to launch an inquiry and help him get those dollars that he had paid for and he deserved. Someone else came in and had been experiencing a discrepancy in their Medicare premium payment rates over 12 years. With no answers from the federal government. The federal government can be tough to navigate. And so my casework team was able to spend some time, many hours reviewing those records, and eventually the account was settled. So I want to make sure that you know the primary job of a district staff is to help you if you have Social Security, if you have VA benefits issues, if you have Medicare issues. So please reach out to my district team. Over the first 5 months, we have conducted 11 mobile office hours. That's where we take our district staff and we get closer to other localities in our community. We try to hit every county often. That way constituents don't always have to drive to Burnsville to see us. We've also responded to over 15,000 calls and letters in the first 5 months. So thank you. Many of you have called in. Many of you have written in. And so we want to be responsive to your needs as well. I have written and sponsored 4 bills and amendments since I've been in Congress. I've co-sponsored another 160 bills, of which almost 70% are bipartisan bills, both Republicans and Democrats on those bills. 17 of my bills have passed out of the U.S. House of Representatives. I want to talk about a few of them here in just a moment. Only one of those 17 did not have bipartisan support. I'm really disappointed in the one, though, that didn't have bipartisan support, because that was H.R. 1. H.R. 1 is sweeping Democratic campaign finance and voter and gerrymandering reform in this country. And the reason this is so critically important is because if you want us to lower the cost, the price of your health care, of your premiums and your deductibles, if you want us to work on lowering the cost of prescription drugs in this country, if you want us to make sure the federal government is negotiating for Medicare, if you want us to invest in transportation and infrastructure, we have got to take the special interest super PAC money out of this country. We've got to take it out. So to me, this is the most important piece of legislation that I have voted to pass since I've been a member of Congress, because everything else that we need to do as a nation is dependent upon having the ability to take on special interest in this country. That's why I was pleased to introduce an amendment that would have prevented, that will prevent, if the Senate will ever take it up, a member of Congress from also serving on a corporate board. Now, you say, what do you mean, Angie? Why do we need a resolution or a law to do that? I have colleagues serving with me in the United States Congress today who also go into a boardroom and give advice to publicly traded companies. That is a conflict of interest. Most of you know I worked in business for over 20 years. There was never a single board meeting that I should have participated in as a member of Congress. And so we have got to stop that kind of working against our people and constituents in the United States Congress. And in fact, I have agreed, and I want to remind you of this because I haven't talked about it lately. I have agreed that as your representative, I sought this office and I serve in this office for the sole purpose of representing our community. I never want to profit off my service to you. So I have committed that I will never become a lobbyist. We have members, former members of Congress, running around everywhere in Washington, D.C., trying to use the fact that they've served this institution and in their communities to influence other members of Congress now. And we have to stop this level of conflict of interest in this country. So these are just some of the things. I could talk about H.R. 1 all night, but we'll never get to your questions. So it's H.R. 1, it's strengthening health care and lowering prescription drug costs. It's Climate Action Now, H.R. 9, which we recently took on, which would ask the United States to meet its national commitment that we made under the Paris Climate Agreement. We have reauthorized the Violence Against Women Act. We have passed the Paycheck Fairness Act, among many, many other things. On a personal bill basis, I am very, very pleased that H.R. 1425, which would reduce the premiums in the individual marketplace, and since I'm in Rice County, when I come to certain parts of this district, many parts of this district only have one insurance provider in the individual marketplace. And so we need to make sure we are moving in the direction, additionally to H.R. 1425, to open up those markets, especially for a buy-in to Medicare, allowing people to buy into Medicare, purchase their own insurance through Medicare to provide for competition for insurance companies who don't have any current competition in the marketplace. And then finally, my first bill that I passed out of the House is called the Local Water Protection Act. So I'm incredibly pleased that that first bill was a very, very bipartisan bill. It passed with over 340 votes. And it looks like Senators Klobuchar and Marco Rubio are going to have the Senate version of that bill, but it would provide local communities grant dollars to be able to tackle non-point source pollution, which we all know is a significant issue in our local communities. So these are just some of the things that I've done as a member of Congress. This week, we are in an in-district work period, which is a fancy way of saying I'm home all week. And I've had an opportunity so far to serve a meal to the families of our troops who are serving overseas, which was incredibly rewarding. I also had an opportunity to tour a South St. Paul elementary school to look at the actual impact that passing the Rebuilding America Schools Act would have on our local communities, as well as see firsthand the work that South St. Paul is doing in the areas of special education. Some of you may know that this is a very critical issue for our communities, having the federal government live up to its commitment to fully fund special education at the 40% level that the federal government agreed to. I am working on a bipartisan basis across the aisle with Minnesota Congressman Pete Stauber. Pete and I don't agree on everything for sure, but on this we agree. And last week we had a little friendly competition that we announced where we each worked our sides of the aisle to see how many new co-sponsors we could get for the IDEA Full Funding Act. And last week alone, we added 13 co-sponsors to that bill. Representative Jared Huffman of California was very happy to see a Republican and a Democrat working to add co-sponsors to his bill. And then we announced on Twitter who the winner was, because we had bet each other a beverage of our choice, which for me means a beer at a local brewery. And the announcement was that it doesn't matter who won. It doesn't matter. If we would stop playing politics and stop counting up the wins and losses in this country, we would all be much better off. So we all win when we fully fund our education system in this country, and we all win when we stop playing politics and caring about who wins, as long as our local communities win. So with that, we've got an awful lot of work left to do in this session, and of course, over the course of the next week, I'll be doing a lot of additional activities, including visiting a soybean farm in Cannon Falls. And so with that, I just want to leave you with one final thing that I'm working on here. With the Gophers going to the College World Series, I thought it would be appropriate tonight to announce that I am playing in the bipartisan congressional softball game. And we're playing, the way it works is the women play together, Republicans and Democrats. So Joni Ernst is on my team and some other Republicans. But we are playing the media the women members of the media, which means basically they average about 25 years younger than we are. So don't get your hopes up about me bringing home a win, but it'll be good fun, and it's just a great way to develop relationships and get to know people to participate in things like that. So with that, I want to say thank you again so much for showing up, for caring about your community and your country. And with that, Earl, I will hand it back over to you to figure out how we're going to do the questions.
Okay, we have thank you, Angie. We have a mic, a cordless mic. Who's going to be carrying? Okay, we have it in the back of the room right now. We'll try to, like I said, I have a little guide here, so everyone will get, each section will get the same number, but not each section may have questions, but I'll keep track of that. So let's open it up for questions, and then we'll work our way around the room, and again, try to keep it to 1 minute. All right, ma'am, in the way. We'll have to wait for the microphone there.
We've met before. And you know, I'm very worried about the increase in CO2 and the global warming issue. And I know you're aware of it, but what are you doing with the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, which the scientists say would lower our carbon by 52% in 20 years, would increase jobs, and would help our economy, not hurt it? Oh, by the way, a number of people that have trouble breathing when the air is bad would be able to breathe.
Thank you so much, and thank you for asking the question. That is exactly the question I would have expected you to ask, so thank you for being consistent. So I want to start with the simple answer to your question is I am one of the original co-sponsors for the carbon fee and dividend, Representative Ted Deutsch's bill that has been introduced in the United States Congress. I believe that addressing climate change can be one of the greatest opportunities that this country has ever seen. And I actually see it from the other side, is if we let China and India lead on renewable energy and addressing climate change, it is a lost opportunity for this country. So not only am I, along with my fellow Congressman Dean Phillips, one of the original co-sponsors of that particular bill, I also, of course, am an original co-sponsor for H.R. 9, which would ask the administration to move forward with the national standards that we set as part of the Paris Climate Agreement. So that would take us back. We also need to look, obviously, at the Clean Carbon Plan, again, that was in process addressing all of these things. And my bill, Local Water Protection Act, again, is an opportunity to partner with farmers and with our communities to make sure that we are addressing non-point source pollution as well. I will say also that I wake up every day and I look at the news, and if there's something in the news that the administration is working on, that the president is working on, that I support, I say that out loud. And year-round sales of E15 in particular for the benefit of carbon emission, but also for our farming community, our corn growers who have been under such tremendous pressure. And I just got the first ding, just to be clear about it. You can ding me louder, Christina, it's okay.
I think that was an apologetic ding.
It was. I want an aggressive ding.
Let's go. I have to describe you, so we'll try the young lady with the headphones.
Hi. Firstly, thank you for hosting this town hall event today. Lately, I have been waking up and seeing the latest horrible thing that foreign countries are doing because they're on edge by our U.S. foreign policy. I've been involved in peace action. I've been involved in the anti-war community in Minnesota. And I'm wondering, what do you think about co-sponsoring H.R. 921, which restricts the U.S. Policy on first use of nuclear weapons? Thank you.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your question. It's an incredibly important question. I'll be honest, I am incredibly concerned as well about the foreign policy of the United States right now. Instead of a strong diplomacy first strategy, we seem to more and more be attracted to dictators around the world, and I am increasingly concerned about the erratic behavior that I'm seeing with respect to foreign policy. So specifically, I think we had a briefing last week when I was in Washington, D.C. on Iran, and the very, very tense situation that we're facing there. And the truth is, and we made it very clear to the administration, if this administration wants to go to Iran into war, they absolutely must come to this United States Congress and ask us in our authority to do that. We are still operating under the authorized use of military force from September 18th of 2001. And so if this administration wants to drag us into another war in the Middle East with no strategic understanding of what that will mean to Americans and our troops and our sons and our daughters, we made it very, very clear that we require that authorization. Specifically, I will definitely take a look at HR 921. That's why Nick is here tonight, to make sure that we get these bill numbers down. But there is no doubt that we absolutely must avoid nuclear war.
Okay. Kaylee, there's a gentleman in the far back of middle.
Hi, Angie. Thanks for coming to my home. I live here on campus. As a baby boomer, I've seen many politicians come and go over my lifetime, as other baby boomers have. And some of them were great, terrific. Many were good, a few were terrible. And the end result, though, there's been a cynicism that's developed that's very concerning to me among all generations. And we have them all here, right down to Generation Z, I guess, that gives me hope. What gives me hope is people like you and to take this chance. And I remember when you were first exploring the opportunity to do this, to go to Congress and make a lot of sacrifices. Can you talk what's your experience been so far in Congress, and is there anything that you can do to encourage, anything you can say to encourage young people to consider running for public office?
Oh, well, thank you for your question. I'm not only going to offer the suggestion that young people run, I'm going to offer the suggestion that they run twice if they have to. So, listen, thank you so very much for that. You know, it would be easy. It would be easy when you're in Congress, when you see, you know, politics instead of policy sort of overtake so many issues. It would be easy to think, wow, you know, this place is, you know, it's not for the faint of heart, right? And I take my own personal experience into that of my values are nothing in life that has been worth achieving happened overnight. And sometimes part of the journey is taking 5 steps back before you take 10 steps forward. And so I would say to young people, to any person of any age who thinks you have something to contribute to this country, come forward, offer yourself. You know, it's just an incredible thing when you get to represent the people around you, and know that not everyone is going to agree with you. No one has ever agreed fully with any politician ever. And probably the most difficult thing for me, which is why I said, call me Angie, is this. When I go to Washington, D.C., you know, I call Mary Lundell and Danny Lundell sometimes during the week, just to remind myself that the bubble that exists in Washington, that's not real. I come home and I spend time with all of you and with my constituents, and you tell me what's real. You tell me that your prescription drug costs keep going up, but your paycheck's not. You tell me that, you know, Highway 35, if you're in Lakeville, needs another lane. You know, it's kitchen table issues that are the things that people talk about to me the most. And, you know, we got to get back to legislating in this country. We cannot let politics stop us from good policy.
All right, let's go to that side of the room with the people who are hogging the breezes that are coming in. Okay, we have a lady in front in a red, white, and blue scarf.
Hi, Angie. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, and that is the best scarf ever. Thank you.
I want to thank you for keeping your promise to hold the town hall every month. And as you know, I've been attending them and I've asked you a question at each one, but you seem to have evaded all of them, so I'm going to try again. I'm going to re-ask my last question, and hopefully you have the courage to answer it honestly this time. Okay, it's HR 5. You are the co-sponsor and you voted for its passage. And you've also said that you will, if I remember correctly, fight for to protect the rights of every American, something to that effect. So as you all know, HR 5 grants rights to some groups of individuals by restricting or holding back rights of others. So I'd like you to explain to me, try again, how is it really an equality act for every American?
So, thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate you coming and asking your question. I do think that you're mistaken. I truly do. The HR 5 is the Equality Act, and what it did was, with the help and support of the Congressional Black Caucus, we opened back up the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and we added the words sexual orientation and gender identity to the Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act always had provisions for certain religious freedom. What the Equality Act doesn't allow is open discrimination against the LGBTQ community, just like the Civil Rights Act does not allow open discrimination against the Black community. So this is what we did, and I appreciate that you disagree with us doing it, but in all honesty, I think you're mistaken on the substance, and I understand it, right? It's hard to get objective news in this world anymore, especially, you know, my Twitter feed is full of progressives, right? We tend to, follow the things that we believe, and one of the reasons why I have this town hall every month, and one of the reasons why I ask you, if to be respectful of everyone's views, is because I think it's important that if there are misunderstandings in the media or in the community, that we have that opportunity to have that open communication. And I still love your scarf.
All right, let's go back to this side of the room. Kaylee, right in the front row.
Hi. So you said that you're an advocate for public health and clean air and water, and also a champion for environmental rights. So I have a question regarding the Enbridge's Line 3 pipeline, which is a pipeline that cuts through northern Minnesota. It goes through the headwaters of the Mississippi, Wild Rice Lakes, Indigenous territory, and ultimately goes right by Lake Superior. This pipeline will leak, and it will present health dangers to everybody and endanger our water and our soil and our air. And so my question is in two parts. The first part is a very easy yes or no. Do you oppose the pipeline? And the second part is, what will you do about it?
Thank you so much for being here. And I know this is an incredibly difficult issue. It's been a difficult issue for the state of Minnesota. I have beautiful Mississippi River running through this congressional district. I also have trains with crude oil from Canada that pose a serious safety risk to constituents in parts of this congressional district too. So my position has been that the Public Utilities Commission could find that replacing this old pipeline would be safer for transporting of crude oil, that I would support it. And if we find that it is not going to be safe to replace this pipeline, that I would not support it. And so Minnesota has some of the strongest environmental laws in the country. And right now, obviously, this pipeline is under review in the courts. The Walz administration, I believe, has appealed, and so we'll see what the courts say. But it's a complex issue because, I want less oil to be used in this country, but I also don't want that oil through this old pipeline posing a risk to our community. So I will definitely continue to keep your thoughts in mind, and my suspicion is that Enbridge 3 ultimately will be decided in the courts, and hopefully based on very rigorous scientific review and analysis.
Okay. Let's go to the very far back there, Kaylee, with the March of Our Lives.
Hi, my name's Linnea. And first I wanted to say thank you for your support for passing HR 8 back in February, the Universal Background Checks bill. But I was just wondering, with more states passing laws on the local level, such as URBO, and with Florida recently allowing teachers to be armed within their schools, I was wondering what more, if anything, you are doing sort of on the federal level to make sure that we are passing and continuing to focus on passing common sense gun reform.
Thank you so much. I know, again, this is a really personal issue to a lot of folks, and I've said all along that I don't believe my support for the Second Amendment, which of course I do support. My family belongs to the West End Trap Club in Eagan, and to be honest with you, when I went turkey hunting with the governor recently, and I'm going to say this because Mary Lundale was my mentor on the turkey hunt, we sat in a turkey blind for 6 hours, and I never got to fire my 20 gauge, so the next morning I went out to the trap club because I wanted to at least shoot some clay. So thank you for that. I support the Second Amendment. My family owns guns, we shoot, and I do not believe that is inconsistent with things like universal background checks, with red flag laws, things like CDC research, things like banning bump stocks in this country. And if you sit at the Hunt Club, which is why I bring it up, and you talk to common sense gun owners, hunters across Minnesota, I find there's an awful lot of common ground here. Where the real problem is the special interest in Washington, D.C. Once again, it comes back to we need Mitch McConnell to bring up H.R. 8. Why won't Mitch McConnell bring up H.R. 8? He won't do it because of the gun lobby in this country. It's not, it is Minnesota common sense. If we could transport a little more Minnesota common sense to Washington, D.C., this entire country would be better off.
I want to let some of you in the back know we do have seats up here. I can see at least 6 of them if you wish. Don't be afraid to come on up and sit down. We're still going to the middle here. All right. Kaylee, right there. Yeah, go stand up.
Hi, I'm Paula Overby. I just got a simple one tonight. I'm wondering if you've had lunch with Barbara Lee yet, and if there's any sentiment in Washington for actually repealing the AUMF.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, I can repeat it. Have I had lunch with Barbara Lee yet, who is a colleague of mine, and secondly, has there been any discussion of repealing the AUMF? I think the conversation is on the table now that we have an administration that is potentially inciting Iran. And so we'll see where it goes. And the answer is, I've spent a lot of time with Barbara Lee. It's interesting, DC is not a town where you have lunch with anybody. It's fascinating, and you know, frankly, they don't really give me time to have lunch on my schedule, but it is kind of fun to tell you that you know, we're on the House floor together, you know, all 435 of us when we're down taking votes, and there are cloakrooms. The Democrats have a cloakroom and the Republicans have a cloakroom, and so when you get to visit with each other, often it's off the House floor in the cloakroom, and then you know, you sometimes see, if you spend your days watching C-SPAN, you sometimes see those of us who are down sort of close to the front there talking about, you know, whatever, and usually it's what we're talking about is trying to get a colleague to sign on to a bill. So I see my colleagues normally only on the House floor in the cloakroom, and so watch C-SPAN sometime and just see who's working each other over. It's actually pretty funny.
Okay, left middle here, in the back, Kaylee, with the, please stand, in the black shirt. Sweater.
Thank you, Angie, so much for coming. A couple years ago, we tried hosting a town hall meeting in St. John's Lutheran, and our congressman did not show up, so thank you for being here today. My question is about immigration reform. I don't really know much about it, but I would really like to know what can be done. We have a growing immigrant population in Northfield and in this district in Minnesota, and we know we're not going to be able to fund or basically find people to work in all the jobs that the state has is one issue, and then there's a whole humanitarian crisis on our southern borders, and how do we deal with that?
Well, I fundamentally believe that we do not have to choose between secure borders and comprehensive immigration reform. And I believe that that is the right direction for this country. As you said, it needs to be smart border security. There's a number of elements to it. It's more border customs agents. It's more immigration judges so that you can adjudicate these cases in a faster way. It's smart technology like drones or sonar or radar to be able to identify those who are not crossing legally. But at the same time, if you just think about it for a minute, and I had a meeting with Neil Kaskari recently. He is the chair of the Minneapolis Fed. And I asked him, what is the one thing we could do to drive economic growth in this country faster? And his answer was comprehensive immigration reform. That's it, comprehensive immigration reform, because we are going to take up H.R. 6. That is a pathway to citizenship for dreamers. That will also tackle TPS, it will tackle DED. So we're going to take that up in the short term, and that will pass the House. I'm an original co-sponsor. But if we really want to address this, we would go back to the 2013 Senate deal with comprehensive immigration reform. We would also look at, H-2A visas and the workers that our agriculture economy needs to get the apples out of the orchard and the cows milked. I mean, this is really, really critical. And as we look at the baby boomers who are reaching retirement age, we're going to be at a real crisis point very soon in this country for skilled workers. And so, we can't let the politics get in the way of good policy. And if we can create economic growth without giving away $1 trillion to a bunch of large corporations, I would prefer that.
Thank you. All right, the gentleman in the blue shirt, please stand, and the mic will come to you.
My name is Howard White. Besides being one of the co-group leaders of Citizens Climate Lobby here in Northfield, I'm very concerned about the federal debt and would like us to be paying it down, which I think we could do in such a burgeoning economy as we're told we have. And so I would like you to give me some hope that in the next budget process we can reduce the federal deficit and deal with the federal debt, because I think it is a challenge equal to climate change.
Thank you so much, and your point is well taken. So this nation now has over $22 trillion. in debt. That is over $60,000 per individual in this nation. And so, you know, it is a serious issue to me. It prohibits us from moving forward on so many of our priorities. So, you know, the question is, when you cut taxes for the top 5% in large corporations, guess what? Your debt is going to grow. The first thing we need is responsible people in government. Many of you have heard me say before that there are often things that I'd like to say I will do, but that I want to see a cost estimate from the CBO, the independent group, before I say whether I will support a bill or not. One of the reasons I like the carbon fee and dividend plan is because all of that money is returned to taxpayers in the form of a dividend. In other words, it is not going to drive the debt to this country, the deficits that we are seeing right now. So the first thing we need is people who are actually concerned about the debt to be in Congress and to be in the White House again. Because until we put people there from either party who ask the question, how much does it cost? Can we afford it? But don't forget, you know, the debt comes both in spending and in raising revenue. And so, for example, I believe we could strengthen Social Security. There's a bill out there. It's called Social Security 2100. If you raised the cap on individual earners and they continue to pay in on 100% to Social Security on 100% of their income, instead of currently today, we're just over $130,000, people stop paying in to Social Security. You could strengthen it through 2100. So we have to be clear about what our priorities are in this country, but I couldn't agree with you more.
Okay, we're on this side of the room. Okay, let's go way in the back with the multicolored ways.
Hello, Angie. Thank you for having this in this location where some of our seniors can come visit you, hear you easily. My question, as you can imagine, is about healthcare. You said in your opening remarks about a buy-in for Medicare, a buy-in to Medicare is one possibility. How likely do you think that is to pass, and what other strategies can we support in getting to universal, easy-to-use health care?
Thank you for your question, and as all of you here know, I believe that health care should be an American right, that every single one of us should have access to health care that is easily accessible and that we can afford. That value comes from the fact that I grew up in a family without access to health insurance for a part of my own childhood. To your specific question, how likely? Look, I think it's the next step. We ought to have a public option in this country to compete with large health insurance companies. We ought to have that option. And in places like Wabasha County, it wouldn't be a luxury, it would be a critical piece of the discussion about where we go next with health care. I believe, you know, priority number one is protecting many of the elements of the ACA that are currently under attack. All of you know that the Department of Justice is currently arguing that the entirety of the ACA is unconstitutional and trying to have the whole thing thrown out. That means the 51% of non-elderly in the 2nd Congressional District would lose protections for pre-existing conditions. That is a stark reality. But the other reality is that 30 million Americans still don't have access to health care in this country today because they don't have access to health insurance. And the reason they don't have access to health insurance is because it's too expensive to afford, because we've been having a conversation about the cost of health insurance for the last decade, when the conversation we should have been having is about the cost of health care. And so one of the issues, highest priorities for me, is to elevate this conversation beyond the cost of health insurance. Why is the cost of health care going up since 1984? Why have we done this and the rest of the world stayed steady? And so Brand name drug companies are the top of my list, and somebody else asked me to talk more about that, because I will. Thank you.
Middle section, gentleman in the blue shirt. Please stand so Kaylee can identify you.
Hi, my name is Dennis. I do have a very serious concern about HR 5. If this is codified into law, the LGBTA agenda would be indoctrinating the children. And I do think about the children at the very youngest age entering school. This has been done through the GLSEN group. It's a large group that has taught this and promoting homosexuality in the schools. It's been done. The CDC reports that when students under this influence of teaching, they have come out with students' performances and grades went down, and it was also combined with dramatic confusion and demoralization of who they really are. Then we wonder why we have multiple problematic issues with the children. How is this affirming to the kids? How is this safe for anyone's child? This is a great disservice to the kids.
Okay.
And a discredit to the public servants who endorse this position.
Well, as the first lesbian mother in Congress, I want to say thank you for being here today. Look, I know this is a tough issue. I know this is a tough issue for people who have deeply held beliefs, religious beliefs especially. I know it is. We're fortunate that we live in a state and in a congressional district that believes who you love and who you choose to marry shouldn't matter. And I know God made me just like He made me, so I'm absolutely comfortable with that. We have 4 sons. Our 4 sons are amazing young men. They have turned out to be just amazing young men. And I think what we have to understand in this country is you can hold your deeply held religious beliefs in one hand, but the responsibility of a public school in this nation is to make sure that every student feels accepted and loved and has the opportunity to do well. And so that means, because there are LGBTQ people in this country and in our public schools, that a teacher and an administration has the responsibility, even if you have a deeply held religious belief in one hand, to hold the rights of the LGBTQ kids and parents in the other hand and say, you will have an equal opportunity to a good education. You will have an equal opportunity to not be discriminated against in the workforce. An equal opportunity to not get married on Friday and be fired at your workplace on Monday because of your legal marriage. So I'm glad you're here. I thank you for your question. And I think it's an important discussion that we give folks the room to have. We have to give folks the room to have this conversation with us.
Okay, the right side of the room, we'll have the, I can't see. They're both red jackets. It looks like a Ghostbuster shirt to me, but I'm sure that's not. No, I'm doing that. You understand? Yeah.
I just had a real reaction. I'm Lori. Thank you for being here, everybody. I just had a reaction instant to the people that with that last question. And it's kind of like in 1982 when my brother came out to me, he was 22 and he just graduated from UMD, and he told me I was getting married, and my mom said, Tam, tell your sister that you're gay before the wedding, before she gets married. So he told me, and I said, no, don't. You know. And he said, Lori, I'm the same person I was an hour ago as I am now. It's like, no, you're, and I just like went crazy, you know. So it takes, so I wish that everybody was anti, could have a brother, a child, somebody that they could love and see that they are the same person and that they wouldn't choose this. They didn't choose this. And that, you know, it took me a while And I love my brother, and I'm so close to him, and I just wish y'all could have somebody in your life that could come out to you and that you could turn your viewpoints around.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Kaylee, right behind you, there is another lady with a question. It's about 8 o'clock. We'll take this question and one more question, Angie, and then we have to be conscious of everyone's time.
Thank you for that. My name is Jean Foreman. I am from Burnsville, Minnesota. I'm a registered nurse and a proud member of Minnesota Nurses Association. Today I've had an amazing day. I spent the morning, thank you, meeting with Ilhan Omar. She hosted a labor roundtable this morning and I was really honored to attend. I do want to ask you if you will be able to, if you haven't already, be on her bill that she was talking about, the PRO Act, Protect Our Right to Organize. And I hope you, if you haven't already supported that you will be a supporter. Tomorrow, I just want to make a quick announcement. At Northwestern Hospital, which is I'm a steward there, we are having an informational picket because we are in contract negotiations. And again, thanks to the Right to Organize, we are working to get nurses fair contracts so that they can take care of all of you if you ever need to be in the hospital. Thank you.
Thank you so, so much. And congratulations to Rose Roach, who was honored at the Humphrey Mondale dinner on Friday night. She is one badass woman. So she is just incredible. So I am almost 100% certain I'm already on the bill. But if not, I will look at my staff and tell them later. We need to talk about that if not. But I know I'm on a bill that expressly grants the right to organize and collectively bargain in this country. You know, when we talk about when wages started to go down in this nation, it can be, wages stopped growing, it can be traced back to those anti-labor movements across this country and the right to work laws that have permeated. These aren't right to work, these are right to work for less. They just make them sound great. And so I will stand against any effort for right to work in Minnesota, and I will stand with organized labor to ensure that they have the opportunity to organize and collectively bargain at every turn.
Thank you, Angie. Angie, I'd like to ask you a final question. You've been to 5 town halls. What are the issues, certainly healthcare, we've heard that tonight. What are the issues you think are going to matter most to Minnesotans in this election, just from what you've heard in the town hall meetings?
Yeah, it's really 4 or 5 things. I start with the price of healthcare, and I say it that way on purpose. It's your deductibles, it's your co-pays, and it's the cost of prescription drugs. And you know, in this country today, 2% of the volume, which is biologics, brand name, specialty and compound drugs, constitute 40% of the cost. And again, if we don't start addressing the actual root cause, which is the cost of health care, we're never going to stop the growth of the cost of health care in this country. So it's just got to be a major focus for us. The second issue is around infrastructure investment. You know, I am very disappointed that, again, we're playing politics with the nation's infrastructure. The longer we delay the trillions of dollars in investments we need to make, the more expensive those projects become. And so I was extremely disappointed last week that we seem to have pulled back from the administration's perspective on the $2 trillion transportation and infrastructure bill that we should be working on right now. I'm on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. I'm on the House Committee on Small Business, and I'll come back to my third committee in just a moment. The other thing that you know, people say to me more than anything is that we need to re-envision our post-secondary education system in this country. Trade skills, technical education, apprenticeship programs, they have got to be part of the mix. And it can't be as an alternative to a 4-year college. As much as we're in a college town today, it is and should be a first choice. And we need to make sure that parents and students understand that this is a first choice for a lot of students. Our son Josh, this was his first choice to go into a trade. It was his first choice to be a CNC operator and run an advanced manufacturing machine. And then Finally, I just want to talk about this for a minute, because we're in Rice County. We got a lot of farms, right? This congressional district, this state lost 10% of its dairy farms last year. Row crops, those markets in China, and I want to recognize someone who's here today. Mike, would you stand up? I'm sorry to do this to you, but this is Mike Peterson, and he runs a farm just outside of Cannon Falls, or Northfield, right outside of Northfield. And he testified in front of the House Agriculture Committee for me recently and talked about the hardships that these self-induced trade wars have set up for our nation's farmers. And so, you know, what farmers want is a fair price, and they want to be able to trade in markets. That's all they want. They don't want assistance packages. They want strategic trade policies in this country and to be left alone to do a good job and to be good stewards of the land. And, you know, this is something that is increasingly important in this nation, because the truth is, if we lose those small family farms, it's not just a business we've lost. It's rural America, it's greater Minnesota, it's bigger than all of us. And so, you know, I've spent a whole lot of time talking to family farmers. 37 people turned up in Wabasha a few weeks ago, and we had a mental health forum on rural America. Okay, so these are really serious issues, and we need adults in the room who know what the hell they're doing on trade.
Good. Thank you very much. Good way to finish. There's a few people we have to thank. We have to thank, obviously, Sam Nelson and Rebecca McCartney and Charles Luvat. They're not here with us still, but they were our musicians and singer today. We want to thank especially the Northfield retirement community, particularly Deborah and Shelley, for helping set this up. We'd like to thank Angie's staff. We've seen them round and about. They don't want to be recognized, but they deserve it nevertheless. And of course, we want to thank Angie for taking time out to be here. Thank you very much.
I just want to thank one more set of folks, and that is the folks who live in this community. We have come into your home, and we've had this town hall tonight. So thank you so much for attending the town hall. Thank you for the contributions you make to Northfield and to this community. And thank you for being here tonight. Thank you again.